The specter of nuclear annihilation loomed over the world during the Cold War, associated with the two great powers of the time, the United States and the Soviet Union. However, this threat was overshadowed by another conflict that also turned into a nuclear rivalry: India versus Pakistan. These two countries have fought 3 wars in the past 75 years, and tensions between New Delhi and Islamabad show no signs of easing. With India's rise on the international stage and Pakistan's closeness to China, the conflict between the two capitals is gaining increasing importance. Globally, their combined population exceeds 1.5 billion, and both countries possess nuclear weapons, raising fears that the likelihood of a nuclear war between them is one of the highest in the world. But what is the origin of this seemingly age-old rivalry, and how does it affect the international situation today? The national identities of South Asia were shaped in the early 20th century under British rule, when the British colonized the Indian subcontinent. One of the communal fractures they exploited to divide society was religion. Before independence, India was a society rich in cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity. The main religions were Hinduism, representing about 70% of the population, and Islam, representing nearly 25% of the population. Before independence and the partition of 1947, the Indian freedom movement was composed of representatives of these two religions, as well as other religious minorities. The major frontline organizations were the secular but predominantly Hindu Indian National Congress, led by Mahatma Gandhi, and the predominantly Muslim All India Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. As the freedom movement progressed, Jinnah began to feel marginalized, and the political tensions between the two men began to affect the entire community. With the seeds of discord sown, cracks began to appear between the Hindu majority and the Muslim minority, leading to an escalation of violence from the 1930s to the late 1940s. The hostilities eventually culminated in a political will in March 1940 with the adoption of the Lahore Declaration by the Muslim League, a resolution aimed at establishing a separate homeland for the Muslims of British India. Meanwhile, World War II forced the British to rethink their occupation of the subcontinent. The efforts and energy expended during the war to defeat Nazi Germany made it unviable to maintain order in India for future exploitation. Subsequently, plans were made for a hasty exit from South Asia, one of the key elements of which was to divide British India into 2 countries, taking into account the demand for the creation of a separate Muslim nation. Thus, India, with a Hindu majority, and Pakistan, with a Muslim majority, were born. In addition to India and Pakistan, there were also a set of 565 princely states that the British had left to their own devices. It was up to them to choose their loyalty, join India or Pakistan, or remain independent. Most princely states opted for India or Pakistan without coercion or with minimal intervention. The factors generally taken into account were geographical location and collective interests. Generally, Muslim-majority states joined Pakistan, while Hindu-majority states joined India. However, one princely state became a point of contention: Jammu and Kashmir, and this remains the most important factor in deciding relations between the two countries. Unlike most other princely states, Jammu and Kashmir was unique for several reasons. Firstly, it was a Muslim-majority state ruled by a Hindu, although there was also a significant Muslim population. Secondly, the strategic location of the state, bordering China to the east, India to the south, and Pakistan to the west, made it extremely desirable for both India and Pakistan. China also claims part of the state to the east. Thirdly, the ruler Hari Singh had signed a standstill agreement and wanted to take his time before deciding whether to join India or Pakistan, waiting for passions to cool and the implications of each option to become clear. However, Hari Singh's aspirations were thwarted by an internal rebellion led by Pakistan supporters, leading to a Pakistani military intervention. Faced with India's inability to support the state against the invasion, Hari Singh finally decided to join India in exchange for its military assistance, thus launching the First Indo-Pakistani War in 1947. The war was marked by fierce fighting, atrocities committed by both sides, and widespread human rights violations. Ultimately, a ceasefire was negotiated by the UN and the line of control was established, separating Kashmir into 2 parts, one controlled by India and the other by Pakistan, with a ceasefire line between them. Tensions between India and Pakistan have continued to rise and fall over the following decades, with 2 more major wars in 1965 and 1971, as well as many minor conflicts.